I'm Book Club. You can see I'm beaming. We have the lovely, gorgeous, incredibly talented Sheila Bugler.
Oh my
Come to
goodness.
talk about Black Valley Farm. Hello, thank you so much for joining us on Publication Week.
Hello, Sam. I am absolutely delighted to be here. And as you know, I just love chatting to you. So it's such an honor to be here. Thank you so much. The book's been out a week today, actually. This is
Is
my
it a
1 week.
week?
1 week
Oh my
birthday.
word, that has come really quickly.
It has come really quickly, and it's been really busy this time round. Just like there's been so much going on. I'm a little bit kind of like a rabbit in the headlights tonight. I think there's just been so much happening with it, which is great.
Yeah. Do you want to show everyone the book and just say a little bit about it?
I would love to. Thank you. Okay,
And then
so
we'll
here's
talk about the week you've had.
It's called Black Valley Farm. It's a departure for me because it's a standalone novel after writing 4 books in my in my D. Doran series.
Yeah.
The novel, the basic premise is it's about a remote farmhouse in Lincolnshire called Black Valley Farm. 9 people were found dead there 10 years ago. And the novel starts 10 years later. Somebody has written a podcast about the deaths on the farm, and there's also another character who clearly is connected to the farm in some way, but we're not really sure how at the beginning.
And we are not going to spoil that for anyone.
No.
Do you want to just say a little bit quickly about Dee Doran? Because she's a different kind of protagonist. She's not the usual police procedural. There's a little difference there.
So basically, for anyone who doesn't know me, I live in, obviously I'm Irish because of my accent, but I live in Eastbourne in East Sussex. I moved here 10 years ago, and soon after I moved here, I started writing what became my Dee Doran series of novels. Dee is an investigative journalist in her 50s. In the first book, she's a bit sort of down on her luck. She's been fired from her job in London. She's been looking after her elderly parents who've both died now. She lives in a beautiful house on the seafront. And the series really follows Dee kind of rebuilding her career as she rebuilds her career as an investigative journalist, researching various crimes that all have a historical element. And the book is as much, I think, a kind of a love letter to Eastbourne, really, and East Sussex, as it is about Dee and the character of Dee and the crimes, obviously.
And they are all here, so I could be you when the dead speak. Before you were gone, you were always mine. It's really hard to concentrate on pointing backwards.
That is really well done, Sam. Well done.
Trying to fit them all in. And as I said, the other ones are on my my Kindle. So we've got some hellos. We've got Marion Todd. That is the biggest hello, Marion, that I think we've ever seen for anyone ever. I absolutely loved Black Valley Farm. I wonder if Sheila found the research scary, knowing that such cults have existed. We will get to that one. Thank you, Kaz, for tagging. And hello, Kaz, and hello, Sarah Blackburn. So we're already getting going. And hello, Ken Ward, lovely Ken.
Hello, Ken.
We had the opportunity to meet recently, which was nice.
Oh, lovely.
So you have had a busy old publication week. So as you say, I can't believe it's been 7 days since Black Valley Farm was released.
7 days since the book came out. And for those of you who don't know, when a book comes out for an author, so I've been busy. I've been attending events. I was at an event in London. I'm obviously doing this tonight. I've been doing read-alongs on Instagram, which seems to be kind of a new thing.
Okay.
I've been doing various podcast interviews and lots more coming up over the coming months. I'm going to Greece on Wednesday for a week with my daughter. So I'm kind of just hanging out until we go away for a week. We don't do anything. I'm also doing loads and loads of book clubs at the moment, which is really lovely, actually.
That must be really nice because you must meet so many different people when you're doing, and different people at different types of events as well.
Different people at different types of events. And one of the things, so the first lovely thing about doing events is that you never know who's going to be. Lots of people in the audience mightn't have heard of me before because I'm always part of a panel with other authors. So obviously some people come from the other authors. So it's lovely meeting the other authors. It's also lovely meeting people in the audience. It's really lovely. Any live event is lovely because, you know, you're sharing the thing that one of the things you care most about in the world, which is writing. And being a writer, it's a really lonely experience. So One of the questions we were asked at an event on Saturday was, what's one of the best things about being a writer? And two of us actually said one of the best things is the opportunity to talk about what we do.
Yeah.
Which is really lovely. And that's why groups like this are so lovely, because, you know, everyone in this group shares a love of crime fiction, which is the thing I love most, you know?
Yeah. It's actually really interesting that I've never thought about it in that respect before. Yeah, we have all this thing that comes, you know, brings us all together. But yeah, it's interesting the thought of the thing that we love most and the way it gels us, I suppose, this thing that we all have in common. And we're all from very different walks of life, very different experiences and backgrounds. But actually, sit a group of readers down in a room. I've never once felt lonely going to one of these events on my own, because there's always somebody to talk to. There's always somebody that'll come and talk to you if you're on your own. There's just so much to discuss, and we're all comparing characters and books and recommending different things to each other. And it just extends our community. And it is a lovely thing just to talk with people about books and characters.
Do you know what I would say about that, Sam? I think you're absolutely right, first of all. And I would say to anyone who's watching this that obviously having an online group like this is amazing. And it's lovely because we're all meeting people, as you say, from all different walks of life. And we all share this single passion, which is a love for crime fiction.
Yeah.
I would say to anybody who's watching this, if you're ever thinking about going to a live event or a festival, don't be shy about going by yourself. So I remember going to Harrogate my first time, and to Bristol my first time, to Crime Fest in Bristol, and being so scared.
Really?
And going Harrogate, I was lucky because I'd had a book published recently, and I had a kind of PR lady to look after me. But when I went to Crime Fest the first time, I was completely by myself, and I wasn't well known enough at that stage to sort of know other crime writers and things like that. So I went by myself. I was so nervous. But the first night didn't go great, I will say, because I kind of spoke to a few people, but ended up eating a pizza in my hotel room by myself. But by the time the second night came around, I had met loads of people. And as you say, Sam, you know, you just get talking to people, and suddenly you're all sharing recommendations, and you're arguing about, you know, who you like the best and who's the best writer, and it's lovely. And I do think there's something really special about the crime fiction community, something unique and special that you just don't get in other kind of areas of literature, I don't think.
Sarah Blackburn said, I never thought that authors could be scared of going. Sarah, darling, everyone's scared of going.
Everyone is scared, of course, yes.
I was lucky enough to meet Sarah in Leeds as well when we did the UKCBC event, and that was really lovely, because I remember last year you asked me about Capital Crime earlier, which takes place this year, the end of August. And when I went last year, I was nervous. You know, it's really scary going and doing something. But I heard my name shouted, and I turned round, and this lady said to me, I was like, hello. She's like, Deb Day, and pointed at herself.
Oh,
and Deb Day is one of our gorgeous bloggers, my friend I talked to online, but I'd not seen her face.
Yeah.
So we kind of did this kind of embarrassing squealing thing and hugged each other, but it was lovely. It was lovely, and we've seen each other again since. But that's the really nice thing. There will be somebody who recognises you can go and talk to, or somebody that you recognise that you can go and talk to. They are a really lovely thing, aren't they? And it does get less nerve-wracking.
It does get less nerve-wracking, because actually the more events you go to, the more friends you make in real life as well. And then you stay in contact with those people online. So, you know, Sarah, anyone who's watching, you know, any event you go, and don't be shy about going up to writers and saying hi, because we love it. We absolutely, we love it. You know, it's such a privilege.
It's a good job the way I hunt you down for interviews, Sheila.
Well, do you know what? As we're talking, Sam, I can't even remember how you and I first met now. It was obviously through this group, but I can't remember. We've kind of become quite close, haven't we?
Yeah, and to see, I had a really nice, you are just blooming marvellous, aren't you? I had a really lovely acknowledgement, and again, another acknowledgement in this book, and the one in You Were Always Mine, I won't get it down and read it out because I'll cry, but it's really lovely. And you become really good friends, because there's so many things in common. You know, you start off with a love of crime fiction, but then you naturally fall into other chats about different things. So it's very easy to do. And especially when you really like the person as well, because obviously I just think you're marvellous. So
Thank
it's
you. It's likewise.
bless you, thank you. I know we could literally sit here and do this for hours. Sorry, everyone. You're in the middle of a love fest.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excuse me. Ken Ward is saying, attending the event in Leeds, didn't know what to expect. New people were friendly online. Nice to meet them live, and if possible, were even more friendly. That's the thing that we all heard, that it was a really friendly event, and that's how we felt, which is nice.
Yeah.
I'm going on to friends. I want to touch on your friendship group. They always get a shout out in your acknowledgements. Obviously, Marion's one of them.
So, okay, I now think Marion's here and she'll know exactly. So, I've got lots of writer friends. Most of them are crime writers, but there's a group of us who are all women of a certain age, and we're all published by the same publisher, and we have just formed this bond of incredible, incredible friendship. There's myself, Marion, Jeanette, Rachel Lynch, and Sarah Ward. And these women, we keep each other going, because this
Yeah,
is really difficult, this business. Sometimes we keep each other going,
yeah.
we prop each other up, and more than anything, we make each other laugh like you would not believe. And that thing about knowing people online first, somehow we formed our own little chat on Twitter. But the only person I'd met in person before was Marion, and we had a Canelo party last month or earlier this month, and we all met up in person, and it was just wonderful. It was just wonderful. And there's something about, as you know, Sam, being a woman, there's something about how women support each other anyway, right?
Yeah,
And just having this group of women who absolutely get this industry we're working in and get how hard it is, and
yeah.
we're, each other's best kind of supporters, and it's amazing. It's amazing, and it makes everything so much easier. Can I just say on that? And I know this is meant to be about me. I have just finished Marion's, I think it's her 7th novel, A Blind Eye. It's absolutely brilliant. She's amazing.
I have actually got it to read, and I'm sorry, Marion, I haven't got to it yet. My
It's so good.
yeah, no, it's is it number 6 or number 7? I'm
I think
sure
it's number
Marion will
7.
tell
She can
us.
put a little. Oh, and Marion's saying, which is very true. Sheila kissed everyone at the camp.
That's so funny. That is so funny. Sorry, I'm at the tail end of she said, "Stop it, Sheila. This is about you, Marion.
Oh.
If you don't tell us, I will Google it. So tell us." So going back to the first question on the stream, which was from Marion, did you find the research scary, knowing that such cults have existed? Now, I was kind of thrilled when I picked it up and saw that there was a cult involved. You literally write the things that speak to where I am in my life at the moment. Every single time. Every time I pick a book up, there's something that resonates with me. And I do seem to have a bit of an obsession with cults. I prefer fictional ones, obviously. But was the research kind of disturbing?
Um, it's a really good question. And I'm going to start by saying that I'm not a writer that generally likes doing research. I know some writers really love it. I tend to be a bit lazy about it, but I felt a really huge responsibility to not make it, to not sensationalize it or to get it wrong. So my research, so there's two things. There's one I can't really say without giving away too much about the plot, so I'll park that. But
Yeah.
what I did do a lot of was I spent a lot of time researching interviews with people who had survived a cult, who had survived being in a cult. So either people who had naturally left them, or lots of people who had escaped cults, and because I wanted to understand as best I could what the experience would be like to be somebody who was part of a cult not by choice. That was the first thing. And secondly, what it was like to try to resume life any semblance of a normal life after leaving a cult. So they were, and I went down a real rabbit hole actually, of kind of reading interview after interview and reading about loads and loads and loads of different cults. It was disturbing because obviously it was a horrific, it's a terrible experience. But it was just something I really wanted to get right. Sorry, that was a really rambly answer.
No, it wasn't. It was a great answer. While you were telling me that, I spotted that we've been joined by Francesca Riccardi.
Oh my God, lovely Francesca.
Women supporting women. I love your friendships with fellow authors, Sheila.
Oh, well, there, Fran is another good woman that we love very much, who I'm hoping to catch up with in Harrogate.
I am looking, this will be my first Harrogate.
Oh my God, you're going to be at Harrogate, so I'm going to get to see you in person.
Yep, finally.
Amazing.
So, yes, expect lots of dodgy selfies of me and Sheila.
And with me, brace yourself for a kiss, Sam. That's all I'll
Absolutely. Say. Yeah, I'm sure Dave will allow
that. He better.
He's just walked past the room and has no idea what I'm talking about. Right, so we need to go back to Black Valley Farm because so far all I've done is fangirl over you. So, standalone, it's your 9th?
It's my 9th novel, yeah.
9th novel. Yeah. Good, I got that right. And obviously this is a standalone. Are you writing more in the D series?
At the moment, I'm not writing any more in the D series. It's not to say never again, but I had written 4 books in the D series and I felt like doing something different.
Yeah.
And for a very long time, I'd had this idea. The starting point for the novel was I'd had this idea of a very remote house in nowhere where a group of people are found dead and nobody knows who they were, why they were living there, or why they were all killed. And I wanted to be quite obvious that they had been killed rather than, they just died of natural causes. So that was the starting point. That's really all I had.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah. And then, but of course, you always have a starting point with a novel. And then the challenge, especially if it's crime fiction, is to sort of build a plausible plot around that starting point. And interestingly, and you've read the book, Sam, so you'll understand this, even though that was the starting point, for me, the book is much more actually an exploration of what it's like for somebody to survive severe trauma and how they cope with that and the different the different ways people survive trauma. So in a way, for me, 3 of the characters, Andrea, Leo, and Claire, and also Nuala to some extent, they've all survived traumatic events, and it's how different people respond to that trauma and the different ways people choose to survive trauma.
Now, that's one of the things I was going to ask you. So, Nuala, I pronounce Nuala. I wasn't sure.
It is pronounced Nuala.
Yeah, I knew. I was waiting for you to say it before I asked,
well
and I knew you would. So, beautiful, beautiful name. You've really gone into the characters. There's so much depth to them. I made so many notes when I was reading this book, but there's no way to kind of look through all of the notes as we're sat here. It's impossible. But it's just still so clear to me. You've got... I love Nuala. I love Nuala so much.
I love Nuala. I must say, Nuala was an absolute... so the central... And I suppose when you start reading the book, it seems that the central character is Claire.
Yeah.
I found it really difficult to get Claire right. And I think that's partly because... she's a more damaged person, so it's quite hard actually to get that right. But Nuala Fox came jumping into my head and onto that page. She was a joy to write, because she's so Nuala, for those of you watching, Nuala is an investigative journalist who does a true crime podcast that's very successful. The podcast is an investigation into the murders that happened at Black Valley Farm 10 years ago. She's a single mother. She's Irish. She's really, really flawed, but in a way that I love. She's flawed, but she's very human. She's got lots of attitude, and she was just great fun to write.
And she changes and develops in ways that she didn't expect throughout this book.
She does. And I would say about Nuala that really the essence of Nuala is that she's a much nicer person than she believes she is. She's a better person than she believes she is. And I think, the way we see that early on is through how she loves her son. But actually, it becomes much more when Nuala kind of allows herself to be who she really is. She comes into her own, really, when she stops caring about things that are less important.
I'd say it's similar for Claire as well. That, she is a woman who has given herself grief for various things for a long time and doesn't believe she maybe even deserves to be happy.
Claire believes that she's a really terrible person who deserves the life that she has. But in fact, again, with Claire is a much better person than she believes she is.
Absolutely, yeah. And I liked that common theme because you could see them, actually sitting down and, sorry, this tickle's driving me mad. You could see them actually sitting down. I could just sit here now and picture them having a conversation in front of them and how much they could both get from each other. And how many similarities there are in their history, even though their lives have been nothing like each other's.
I think that there are similarities. They're both damaged. They've both had trauma. I think the difference is that Claire beats herself up about being a bad person, where Nuala is so bolshy that she's kind of unapologetic about what she views as her flaws. She's just like, well, if you don't like me, I don't care. Except she'd swear when she says it. She's a bit more sweary than that.
That made me laugh. The occasional, I'm not going to say any of the words, but it did make me laugh occasionally that, she'd throw an offhand word after somebody. Every single time I'd just kind of chuckle because we all do it. We all say things in our heads, but Nuala, she'll just say it.
So and Nuala, because you've read the book, but Nuala would probably say about herself that the thing she's best at is pissing people off. She's very good at upsetting people and rubbing people up the wrong way. And obviously, the challenge for her in the book is the work situation she finds herself in is that she has to work with people she really hates.
Yeah,
and she has to kind of quieten her instinct, which is to rub them up the wrong way.
Laura has asked, do you prefer writing the series or standalones?
Hello, Laura. I definitely prefer writing standalones, but saying that, I seem to keep falling into the habit of writing a series. So, for example, it's taken a little bit of self-control not to go to my publisher and say, why don't we turn Nuala Fox into a series? I think it should be a great series.
Yeah, I really do.
Yeah, but I'm at a stage where I'm thinking what I'd like to do is write standalones rather than series. I was saying to Sam just before we started, actually, that I find writing a series, for me, it can be a little bit restricting because there are characters and stories that it can be, for me, quite hard to fit into the structure of a series, whereas it's easier to go and do them if it's a standalone.
Yeah, and I said, didn't I, that sometimes there might be people that you want to kill off, and if it's part of a series, you might not be allowed to.
Exactly, there is that.
So that'd be infuriating. You really want to give somebody a horrible, you're having a bad day, you want to give somebody a horrible death, and then you're told you're not allowed to do it.
Although I must say that's never happened actually with me, that I've been told not to do it. But yeah.
It would restrict the death toll maybe, because there are a lot of deaths in Black Valley Farm.
There are actually.
I think this is your highest, off the top of my head, this is the highest body count.
But in fairness, most of it happens before the novel begins.
And a lot of it happens off the page, doesn't it? And some of the stuff that happens off the page, I was really glad happened off the page.
So
doesn't mean that you shy away from anything, though. You really go into kind of, you don't leave anything out. You just leave the gruesomeness of some of the scenes out.
So what as a writer, I'm completely uninterested in writing graphic descriptions of violence. It doesn't do anything for me. It's not what I want to do. I'm not saying there is a place for that in certain types of crime fiction.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But it's absolutely not for me. It's not for me.
Yeah.
So my interest is much more about the impact of those gruesome acts rather than writing a graphic. It's not what I would want to do, So I'm much more concerned about how that affects people rather than writing about the thing itself.
And the impact of this story is one of the things I made a lot of notes on, because it's almost as if not that you've held back. It's not a lighter story. it's that you've really taken a lot of time to go into each situation and each character and think through the themes and how it all ties in together. And one of the notes that I wrote was that some of the things that we find out through the book, because you're not hitting us over the head with twist after twist, which there's nothing wrong with, absolutely not. Love a twisty book as well. But you kind of you visit scenes from, as you show us as each character finds out certain things, and we get to see all of their reactions. There's so much depth to each character here. You know, you've really kind of taken your time to go into each one.
So first of all, thank you for saying there's depth to the characters. That means a lot. Secondly, yes, I mean it is a complicated plot, and
But you've made it easy to follow.
I thank you. I'm really glad, because I would say it's incredibly difficult to. I think what's incredibly hard, first of all, anyone writing crime fiction will say it's really difficult to plot a complicated novel. It's really difficult to plot a complicated novel where the surprises, I always believe the surprises have to be surprises that the reader could have guessed themselves. You kind of want the reader to go, oh yeah, I should have seen that coming, but I didn't. You know, that's the key.
Yeah.
And of course, above and beyond all of that, you have to do that while writing characters that your readers care about. Because if you don't, you know, I've said this many times, but it's a great myth to assume that crime fiction is plot driven, it's character driven.
Yeah.
But what we have to do as crime writers is we have to first of all develop characters that our readers will care about. So, and that starts with me caring about the characters. But then the challenge is to, you know, write a story that's complicated enough to fit the conventions of what we expect from crime fiction, and also to make it original, which is really difficult because look at how many crime fiction books are published every week. You know, it's so hard to keep being original and to keep surprising your readers. It's a real challenge, especially because, sorry,
no, good.
especially because I really believe that in the last sort of 10 or 15 years, crime fiction has ballooned. You know, it's much bigger than it used to be, and it's really upped its game. The level of the quality of books that are being published at the moment are astonishing, you know.
I interviewed, in fact, Mike Craven, congratulations on publication day. I interviewed Mike last week about Fearless, which is his American set.
Which I haven't read yet, but he's an amazing writer.
Oh my God, it's amazing. It really is. Yeah, I absolutely loved it. Would you ever want to write something set in America, or are you quite happy UK based?
I know, I think I would like to write something set in America, yeah. But again, there's that challenge of getting it right. I don't know if you remember, Sam, quite a while ago, we had an author interview, me and Chris Whitaker, and he writes all of his books set in America. He's never been there. I couldn't believe it when he told me that.
It's insane, isn't it? That you never know that from reading.
No, I'd love to write
We Begin at the End. You would never know that he's not set foot there. Whether he has since then, but I did meet him briefly last year, kind of. See, this is the thing. I mean, I've spoken to him. We talk about talking to authors and being nervous. I very timidly kind of sidled up to him one morning in the hotel at breakfast and said hello. I told him who I was. And he was like, "Oh, hello," and he was very nice. And then I shuffled away again. He's really lovely. But it's still going up to somebody. So especially because we weren't actually at an event at that point. This was like the hotel the next day, you know, getting ready for the day of events. I still get nervous and tongue-tied like I am now. You know, we still
tongue-tied with me.
I'm thinking back to how awkward I must have felt in the moment going and saying hello.
Oh, well, I'm glad you did. I'm sure he was glad you did as well.
He did. He was lovely. He was really nice. But yeah, it's a scary thing going up and talking to people when you don't know if they're going to have a clue who you are. You know, you meet somebody on camera once and then you're supposed to remember who they are and where you've met them.
And some people are better at remembering faces than others, right? You know, so I'm very good at
just forget everything in my head. Yeah. Everything just falls out of my head. Am I allowed to ask you what you're working on now?
Yes, of course. So Black Valley Farm, as you know, we know it's a standalone, and as I've just said, I'm hoping to continue writing standalones. So I've just sent recently to my editor my next standalone book, which will be coming out next year. And I'm very excited about it because it's the first novel I've written set in Ireland. So
Ooh, you've wanted to do this for a while.
Yeah, and I absolutely, it was such a difficult book to write. It was so difficult that I almost gave up, but I got it done and I absolutely love it. And my editor isn't finished reading it yet, but my agent has read it and she thinks it's my best book yet. So I'm
That's
very
fantastic.
excited.
So at this point, you can't really tell us anything about it, can you?
Of course I can. I'm very happy. I can tell you the bits that won't change. So the title will probably change. So there's no point telling you the title.
Yeah.
But the premise won't change too much. The premise is it's set in a town in Ireland, in the west of Ireland, in County Clare. And the basic premise is about a woman called Leah Ryan in her 30s who left Ireland 18 years ago under a cloud. And she's returning home after an 18-year absence, coming back to visit her mother, who's very ill, and her brother, who's been at home looking after her mother. That's the basic premise. The day she arrives back in Ireland, somebody she grew up with is murdered, and that's the start of the novel. And like all my books, there's a link between a previous crime and what's happening today when Leah comes back to Ireland.
It's really interesting that one of the notes I made is that we really seem to enjoy similar things. So you always write things that speak to me. I always say it's like it's written for me. Whatever you write, it's like it's been written for me. Just me, nobody else. I'll share it with everyone, but no, it's
that's such
like
a lovely
it's
thing
just
to say,
written for me.
Thank you.
But we seem to have similar. So I really like cold cases and I really like dual timelines. So kind of tying things to the past and there being some things that you know and some things that you don't know, some things that you think you know. You know, we do. I know I said I like cults and things as well, but I think for me the biggest thing is past and present with a dual timeline. I love reading cold cases. I think they're so satisfying in a way that you don't tend to get in real life.
Well, I think
they fill a hole, don't they? They fix a craving.
I think they do. No, I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because some readers really don't like that dual timeline, you know. So it's first of all, I think that's quite a subjective thing. I love it personally, which and obviously, you know, it's how I like to write. I am really interested, like fascinated, in the impact of a crime on the kind of community of people it affects. You know, that can be in a city, it can be in a small town or whatever. And I'm interested in the long-term effect of that. And I think that's probably why in almost all my books there's some link to a crime that happened in the past, because I'm really interested in kind of the reverberations of that over time and how it affects people years later. You know, I just think that's really fascinating because we're all shaped by so many things that happen to us at so many different times in our lives. And I think there's something particular about when a crime happens in a community, how that shapes and changes that community, often for generations to come.
Yeah, I think there's something about a crime happening in a community that brings you all together,
or drives you all apart.
Yeah. And you see all of the different things. It might be that you see news fans and journalists all over the place when you're thinking it makes you quite protective as a community.
It does, but also
will you just
start to suspect everyone in the community, you know?
Yeah. But when you kind of from the opposite side as well, it makes you protective to the people who are victims in any way, shape, or form. Doesn't matter how they're a victim, but makes you protective, and you want people to just leave them the hell alone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's quite
and
quite also a difficult topic when it's a real thing rather than fictional, and then you still manage to get that emotion into your books.
Well, thank you again. But I think the reason I do is because you're right, and I think it's really important, you know. And I think so often, you know, when a terrible crime happens, it's so sensationalized and it becomes such a story, and we forget that there are real people impacted by this. You know, parents who've lost a child, or husbands who've lost a wife, or you know, children who've lost a parent, and just these people's lives have changed forever.
Yeah. Excuse me. I don't know what it is with my throat tonight. This cough seems to be coming back a little bit with a vengeance, which is really fun. I wanted to talk about one of the themes that this was something that really, really struck me. The feeling I've written it down. So if I thought you were going for a sip of your drink, then I was going to say you've got time. The feeling of unease we get from a perceived threat, and there's a message received by, I won't say who. There's a message received by somebody in the book, and their reaction of it, because of the lack of context and the mystery surrounding who this message came from, it made me think about how we react as humans. I mean, you literally planted seeds for different things in my head while I've been reading. So watching how different people in the book react to different situations, and then if you really drill down into what they're reacting to, there isn't much there, but it's how their flight or fight or their internal response to it comes across. And that was really interesting to read because you did things that I didn't expect.
I think on that, so Stephen King always talks about how we write a book first. We write a book, and then it's only after the book is written that, as a writer, you go back and you realize that there are themes you've been exploring in the book. So for me, I didn't know actually until this book was finished that because I've had a really difficult 5 years in my life. And I didn't realize until this book was almost finished that actually a huge part of this book is about exploring how we respond to traumatic events, and how we deal with that. And actually, if you look at the book, very clearly, almost all of the characters are reacting to some form of threat or trauma. And it's the different ways they all deal with it. So, in Claire's case, it's to hide away. In somebody else's case, it's to try and manipulate the people around them. And in Nuala's case, Nuala's somebody very clearly for whom control is very, very important.
Yeah.
So when she feels she doesn't have that control, that's terrifying for her. But again, that isn't something I deliberately set out to do, but it just happened. And I know why it happened, because there's somebody very close to me who has a very high control personality and has struggled because of that. So, those things, I think that's part of the magic of writing, I think, is that, I would say, definitely for me, often I think I'm doing one thing, and when the book, through all the pain it goes to getting it written, is finally done, I see that I've been exploring much more stuff than I realized. And I think for me it is, I'm exploring stuff that I care about, and I guess trying to process, maybe I wouldn't go so far as to say it's therapy, but it's definitely processing things that I have been through myself, but obviously in a very different way, through fiction.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, actually, that maybe it's not the therapeutic side, it is the processing. You are working through things that you maybe didn't even realise. But in the same respect, you are then helping readers to work through things. You be reading something and you'll have this moment of, oh, something just clicked into place for me. I can't even say what, because then it would be a spoiler.
And thank you for not spoiling it. But I definitely would say this, that every book I write, for me, is harder than the book I've written before. The more books I write, the more painful the process becomes. Now, one reason for that is that it becomes more painful because, I just understand better what makes a good book. And so I'm setting my standards higher every time. I'm not saying I always get it right, but, I am setting my standards higher every time. But I think the other reason it's becoming more painful is that I think unconsciously I'm putting more, I'm opening myself more to the process and putting more of the vulnerable parts of me maybe into the books. And again, I can only speak for myself, but I couldn't write my books any other way, So I think that bit of me that's in there, I hope, is what makes the characters authentic. But it is very painful for me to do, but it's the only way I can do it, if that makes sense.
I made a note that you've used real people in your books, in name at least, and we'll go to Kath in a minute.
Okay.
And possibly Claire.
No, not Claire, just Kath.
Okay, because in the acknowledgements there are a Claire and a Kath.
That's right, but Claire has
I did wonder, but
the real Claire has a different surname.
Mm-hmm. Have you been a character in anybody else's book yet? Would you like to be? Have you got an idea of what you'd like to be?
I would love to be a character in anyone's book. I wouldn't care what I am, but I do think I've got such an unusual name that it'd be quite hard for anyone to sort of put me in. I think maybe I'd have to be a very minor character, I think.
I don't think so. I don't think Sheila Bugler's hard. You hear it once, you know it's not Bugler, it's Bugler. And then you remember. Somebody has asked, how do you hook a reader with the first line or first page? Sarah asked that. I've just had a look.
I think obviously I would say, Sarah, we all want to do it with the first line, but actually that's such a challenge because first of all, you can have an amazing first line, but if you can't keep it going for the next 100,000 words, that's a challenge. And so for me, I definitely would like to say the first page or two, the first few pages. And I find as a reader as well, if I'm not very good with crime fiction, if it's very slow at the beginning, I like a kind of grab me and bring me in there.
Tell us about Kath Dinsdale.
So I had an absolutely amazing book launch in Eastbourne for Black Valley Farm. It was fantastic, huge big party, and two girls that I worked with ages ago, Kath Dinsdale and Claire Lyons, trooped down from London to Eastbourne on this kind of big jolly. They were hilarious. They came all the way down just for a few hours of a book launch in the evening. They came in, they were fantastic, they had great fun. But one of the things I wanted to do for the book launch was to, I didn't want it to be just about me, but I wanted to raise money for a local charity. So there's an amazing charity in Eastbourne. It does amazing work. And it supports families of people who've lost children to cancer, who've lost children to early deaths. It's called You Raise Me Up. It's amazing. So we did a big raffle for You Raise Me Up. We gave away loads of prizes, and one of the prizes was for somebody to be a named character in the book. And Kath won that prize, which was brilliant because she'd come all the way down from London. And then she got this prize. I think she also got a box of chocolates. And then the two girls went off back to London, giddy as anything, giggling the whole way back in the train as they were kind of thinking what kind of character she might be. So that's how Kath got her name in the book.
Do you think she's ever going to get the chance to be a kick-ass superhero?
Yeah, because that was the problem. Because by the time I had chosen her, I knew which character she was going to be. But then later,
you've got to be thrilled with who she is, though.
I hope so. But then later, the two girls sent me a message saying, "Oh, we've had such fun on the train, thinking what character Kath is going to be." And I think she had this idea she's going to be this like kick-ass kind of detective superhero. Maybe she will be in another book.
We talked about how I said it's not a book that smacks you in the face with twist after twist. These surprises, they're all kind of realistically put through. You know, it doesn't even feel like, I don't know if you did plot it, it feels very much like these are just people telling a story.
So I talk a lot about how the fact I don't plan, I kind of write and stuff, but even though I don't plan like Marion does or something like that, I still have to plan and I have to plot really, really carefully. So I feel massively honoured if you think that they just seem to have happened naturally, because that took a huge amount of work and planning, and
it's very smooth. You cannot
that is
see the lines.
That is amazing.
You can't see the joins where things have probably been screwed up and screamed at and thrown together and picked back up.
And also, I think for me personally, I think I prefer a novel where the surprises come naturally as part of the narrative. Without bigging myself up, I think that's harder to do. So I'm really glad it worked for you. Yeah, it was really hard. Yeah. Thank you. But no, it was really, really hard to get that the way it is. And as you said, to make it so that you're learning as the characters learn, you know, that's really quite a tricky one to get right. So if I did get it right, I'm delighted.
You absolutely did. It's no secret how much I love you in your books. This is so it's almost a little scary picking up a new one because it's something completely different than Dee. You know how much I love Dee Dora and love the books. I read something today. I wonder if I can find it. S.J. Watson shared something on Twitter, and it was a quote that said something about favourite characters. I'll come back to that in a minute, but it was a really lovely thing about characters and how they are. Here we go. Fictional characters might not be real, but our relationships with them are. Studies show it's difficult for our brains to distinguish between our familiarity with characters on TV and our personal relationships with real people. The effect is so strong that just thinking about watching your favourite TV show can make you feel less lonely. Now, how true that is in kind of whether it's been studied, I would imagine it has been, but the fact of reading that remains. It made me think of Dee Doran, because I think there's just something that there's nothing that you feel like you couldn't go and sit in the chairs overlooking the beach, at her house and just have a glass of wine or a cup of tea, whatever it was. There's nothing that you feel like you couldn't trust her with and you just couldn't sit down and talk through. I think she's one of my go-to people. If we could peel somebody off a page, she'd be one of the first ones for me.
Well,
which is not a secret, I tell everyone.
I do love Dee. She is, and I've said this before. I mean, there's definitely an element of Dee that's based on a real person. And there's a friend of mine in Eastbourne who is this woman with this massive, massive heart. And I do think that Dee, she's definitely another flawed character. But the great thing about Dee is that she has got this huge heart, and she just cares about everyone around her so much, often to her own detriment, in fact. I really love her. And I think there is something about, I think of my characters as real people. So I don't have spreadsheets for my friends, right? I don't have spreadsheets saying, oh, Susie likes this, or, Sheila likes this, or whatever. And likewise, I don't have spreadsheets for my characters. I don't write down lots of stuff about them. But if you asked me, for example, what would Nuala Fox like to drink? I can tell you off the top of my head, she would like a crisp glass of white Sauvignon Blanc, preferably from France, not New Zealand. Thank you very much. But I've never written that, so I just know that about her. So,
I was trying to think what her drink would be, and I couldn't think what it'd be.
Well, I know because she's in my head as a real person, and all of my characters, they feel like that to me. They feel absolutely like real people.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because that's how I feel. And I watched an interview, and Dominic Nolan had said in this interview that he's the opposite. He thinks that you couldn't possibly know a person the way a character that in the way that you know a person. You're only ever going to know a certain percentage of them. But I was thinking, well, actually, that could be the same in life. You might only know that much about a person.
Well, because I believe that, Sam, because I just think, okay, we all know some people better than we know other people. But you and I have kids, for example. So, we know our kids as well as anyone can know them, except we don't know our kids. Their friends might know other bits of them. Their friends definitely know bits of them that we don't know about. And stuff.
Oh, absolutely, of course.
And the people you love most, but the people you love most and the people you're closest to, we all have our secret lives. We all have
a work face and an interview face and I don't know. I think we're being fairly who we are here, but in different situations we act in certain ways. There's things that we might say here that we maybe wouldn't say in another situation.
Of course, and even my husband, I love him, and we've been together for 30 years. But I'm sure there's loads of things I don't know about him. I might like to think I know everything about him, but I don't think I do.
You know all the important stuff. This is the thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I forget silly details about certain things, but knowing a person is a feeling more than being full of knowledge.
I think you're right. I think it is a feeling. Actually, that's a really, really brilliant way of putting it. And I think that's the same. That's how I feel about my characters. The same. I kind of feel them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Can I just say a little word randomly about characters? After saying I've loved Nuala. She's one of the favorite people I've ever written. I also loved writing Andrea. I loved writing Andrea. I know we can't say too much about her, but it was such fun to write her.
And I can't say which character of yours I'm not comparing her to, but I had a similar feeling about her. I'll tell you as soon as we switch off. I had a similar feeling about Andrea as I did about one of the previous
Was that an Ellen
Previous
Kelly book?
characters? No, it's a Dee Doran.
Okay, you can tell me in a minute. Tell me
I'll
after.
tell you in a minute.
But the other thing I just want to say, and again, no spoilers, but I one of the things I'm possibly most proud of about Black Valley Farm actually is the very final chapter, which I absolutely love. And I know you shouldn't say you love anything you wrote yourself, but I didn't write that chapter until about a week before the book was due to go to my publisher. I kept trying to write it,
Wow.
and I kept trying to write it, and I couldn't get it right. And I know the reason I didn't get it right before that chapter was I wasn't writing authentically about how the story would end for Claire. But I just want to say randomly that chapter I'm very happy with.
And you should be. Sorry, you absolutely should be. So the last bit, if I remember rightly, is 1 year later.
Yes,
So
yeah,
that's the bit that you mean.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Okay. I agree with you, and we will leave it there.
yeah.
But we're not going to talk about any of that in detail, obviously, because it's the end. So we can't
No, we
possibly.
can't. But I just very,
Excuse
and
me,
it's
sorry.
lovely when things like that happen, and it just happens that chapter just came in one go eventually, and it just was there, and
Wow.
I was like, okay, I've got it now. I've got how this book ends.
So that must be very satisfying for you when you finally, there's something missing, there's something
Mhm.
more you want to say. You've got a million words going through your head, and you have to channel it into one chapter, and then
I
suddenly it
think,
lands.
and suddenly it lands, and I know when it lands, and the same with the next book that's coming out next year. I know when it lands when I feel the emotion of it.
I think that's really interesting that the feeling that when it's done as well, and that must be very calming. You must be
Uh,
able to feel like you can breathe a bit then.
well, I think so, and also, what happens? I mean, I alluded to this earlier. My writing process is incredibly painful, so I think I never really feel that I've got it right until about 6 weeks before my deadline, which is really stressful. But I can't
Mm.
seem to do it any other way. Can I just say I've just seen Ken Ward's comment, and I'd like to say thank you, Ken. Thank you so much for
Oh,
downloading.
bless you. Ken's lovely. We met briefly in Leeds. We managed to get a bit of a chat. We need a longer chat. Oh, Ken, you'll love this book.
Oh, thank
There's
you.
just so many good things to say about it. One of the things I want to touch on, and we can't really, don't know, can't. There are moments of this book that they're like magic moments that you have with the characters, where you're just experiencing this joy that they're experiencing in various ways. And I'm not going to give any detail about the scenes. When you read this, Ken, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. There'll be these little slivers of magic. There's just these little pockets of these things that happen that just bring utter joy, utter joy. It's just really beautiful. And I think having magical moments like that in a crime book is a really wonderful thing and must be really, really hard because it must make you emotional. I felt emotional reading it. It must be an
Yeah, but
emotional
then I
thing
think
for you.
it's the only way I know I've got it right is when I feel that emotion myself.
Yeah.
And there is something about, I'm sure anyone who's a writer who's watching this will say you have to feel, it has to feel real for you as the writer. You can't, if it doesn't feel real for you, you need to get rid of it. There's a question I've just seen from Marion. Have you seen it? Which do we, Kindle, paperback, or audio? You can only have one. What would you choose, Sam?
I'm not. I'm not choosing one, is what I'd say. What I tend to do, I can't really read so much on the Kindle at the minute. I'm having to have several breaks. So I used to mainly read on Kindle. That was my main thing. All the arcs I was sent with Kindle. Having to read paperbacks at the minute, which has been rather nice. It's less stressful on the eyes, I think, for me at the minute.
Okay.
But I refuse to pick one, and you can't make me, Marion.
I
Can
will
you
pick
pick one?
one, and this is heresy, but I would pick my Kindle definitely because
I don't think
after
it's heresy.
after
I
being
really
against
don't.
Kindle for years, I'm like, I just think two things. Okay, really important. I can read in bed beside my
Yeah,
husband. without having
And if
the
you
light
drop it
on.
on your face, it doesn't black your eye.
But also, like, I'm going to Greece next week. I can bring my Kindle and
Yeah.
hundreds of books, and I don't have to decide before I go on holiday which books I'm going to bring with me and what's going to weigh down the suitcase. I love it for that. I left my book on holiday. I left my Kindle on holiday last year, and I didn't realize till I got to the airport for the flight back, and I nearly cried. But luckily, I had the Kindle app on my phone, so all was not lost.
Well, that's good at least. Audio, I can only follow. Must be something just about the way my brain works. I zone out a lot of things. You know, kind of. I'll think I'm really concentrating, and then suddenly I'm off over there doing something else. I can't follow fiction on Audible. I did listen to. I can't think what it was. There was one. It was a cozy crime, and I read part of it in a hardback and listened to part on Audible, just to see if I could, and I did manage to.
I
But
love it
I
when I'm
think
driving in the
I
car.
can't
The
do it.
audiobooks are great in the car.
Yeah, I can only really do it with non-fiction. So there was a brilliant book called, I think it's called The Art of Not Giving a F
Oh
Word.
yeah.
Oh, that I've had some fun with that book. But again, non-fiction, you can kind of zone in and out, and
Yeah.
you know, you can rewind a bit, and but I don't think I can concentrate on the details unless I'm reading
Okay.
it. Ken says Kindle for the storage capacity.
Exactly,
Somebody
Ken.
else
I'm
said
with you on that. Yeah.
e-readers. Loads of people prefer Kindle now. And I think that's absolutely fine. I think as long as people are reading,
As long as people are reading, exactly.
then
Yeah.
it makes no difference. There's no preference to the order of things. You know,
Marion just said she loves audio in the car. I'm with you in that, Marion. I love it in the car as well.
I can't drive, but if I did, I definitely wouldn't be able to listen to anything and concentrate on it and not drive into stuff.
Can I say I can't drive is said like a true writer. I think so many writers either can't drive or learn to drive really late in life.
I'm not learning. I'm not doing it. I've decided no. That ship has sailed, and I'm very comfortable with that. I'm okay with that. Give us a recap. What a lovely way to spend an hour. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
thank you, my darling. Thank you.
So give us a recap, and thank you to everyone who's joined in, asked questions,
Yes,
made
thank you,
comments.
everyone. Thank you so much. So, recap, I'm going to flash the cover again. It's called Black Valley
Oh, it's
Farm.
such a gorgeous cover as well. You must be thrilled to bits with
No,
that.
really, really happy
That
with this cover,
sky.
actually.
Oh,
Yeah, that's my lovely publisher. They do great covers,
they
actually.
really do. Yeah.
And Black Valley Farm, it's standalone crime novel about the murders that took place in a remote farmhouse 10 years ago. It's about the woman who's written a true crime podcast about the murders. And it's about a woman called Claire who clearly has some connection with the farm, but we're not really sure what it is. Claire is hiding from the world. That's all we know about her.
And it's a fantastic book. I absolutely loved it.
Thank you so
Absolutely
much.
love
Thank
it.
you.
And best of luck with it. I hope it flies. I'm sure it will do because it's blooming brilliant.
Thank you. Can I just say before we go, if anyone reads it and they want to get in touch with me, if they have any questions, just get in touch, please. I always love hearing from people. Thank you.
We've had lots and lots of lovely comments thanking you for the hour. And I look forward to next time. So once you've got a publication date, we all want to hear about it.
I'll let you know, definitely. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye, everyone.